He was raised on account of our justification because the sin debt had been paid. Now, that the sin debt has been paid, my sin debt was paid in, let's say, 84, 81, somewhere along in there, nearly 2,000 years ago. I wasn't saved until 1949. The question where were my sins? I was 14 years old. And a stone sinner, a good sinner. What I don't understand? What happened to him? Now, there is an answer as to what happened to my sins. And it has to do with all of those begets. Abraham beget Isaac, beget Ishmael. Isaac beget Jacob and Benjamin. Eber beget, all those begets. But there is one explanation of a beget that explains where my sins were before I was born, or born again. And how come the sins that I committed before I was saved, how come God didn't hold them against me? A simple answer would be that I didn't have any sins punishable by death. I sure hope a colleague of mine is listening to this. He's a systematic theology man. And I want to tell him that this is beyond systematic theology. You can't go where I'm going following systematic theology. It won't reach deep enough. Because every man has a measure of grace and faith. So, but there is one beget that explains where my sins were for really 1900 years, and why God didn't hold them against me, and why he doesn't hold anyone's sin against them born of a woman, beget by a man. Homosexuals can't deal in this range because there has to be some begetting, and homosexuals can't beget. Now, I know there's artificial insemination and surrogate mothers and all that. That's not the begetting. The begetting is with the sperm donor. Now, so let's find this one beget that explains how God forgive sin. Hebrews chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 9 and 10. Hebrews chapter 6, verses 9 and 10 is referring back to Genesis chapter 14, verses 18 through 20. When Abraham rescued Lot and Melchizedek, king of Salem, met Abraham on his return. And this Hamitic king, high priest of God Most High, was so important that Abraham paid him tithes. And over in Hebrews chapter 6, it talks about the ramification of Abraham paying him the tithes. It has to do with begetting. Look at verse 9. Seven. 7, not 6, 7. 7 now. You see, Abraham begat Isaac. Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Levi. Look at verse 9. When Abraham met Melchizedek, Levi was in his loins through Isaac and Jacob. So the Bible says that, if I may say so, Levi also, who receiveth tithe, paid tithes in Abraham. You see it? For he was yet in the loins of his father Isaac, who was in Jacob, who was in Abraham, when Abraham paid the tithes to Melchizedek. His ancestors paid the tithes also. For he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Now, I got a visual on camera number 5. Addresses this issue. The visual asks the question, on your right as you look at the screen, where were you there when they crucified my Lord? I only got about 10 minutes left to deal with this. The answer, were you there when they crucified my Lord?